My name is Jesus Martin, a 65-year-old retired construction manager who built homes for others while sacrificing everything for my own family. I worked my fingers to the bone so my son Michael could become the successful lawyer he is today. Last month, I proudly wrote him a check for $50,000 to help with the down payment on his dream home. 2 days later, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "The ticket costs $1,400, Dad." My world stopped. My hands trembled as I realized what my son had become. Before I tell you how I discovered what my son was really after, tell me where you're watching from today and hit subscribe if you've ever felt taken for granted by someone you love. I was born to Mexican immigrants who came to Texas with nothing but hope for a better life. From the age of 14, I was working alongside my father in construction, learning the trade that would eventually become my livelihood. We struggled, but there was always dignity in our work and love in our home. My parents taught me that family comes first, always. By the time I was 18, I had saved enough to start community college, working full-time during the day and studying at night. It was exhausting, but I was determined to build a better future. During my second year, I met Sophia in an economics class. She was smart, kind, and had the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. Unlike many of the other students who looked right through the tired construction worker in the back row, Sophia saw me. "You have the strongest hands I have ever seen," she said the first time we studied together. I was embarrassed at first. My hands were calloused and rough from work. But she touched them gently and added, "They tell your story better than words ever could." We married 3 years later in a small ceremony with just our families. I had just started my own construction business focusing on residential homes. The early years were tough. We lived in a tiny apartment, saving every penny. When Sophia got pregnant with Michael, I worked 18-hour days to make sure we could afford a better place to live. The night Michael was born, I held him in my arms and made a silent promise that he would never have to struggle the way I did. "You are going to have every opportunity, mijo," I whispered as he slept. "Your dad is going to make sure of that." 2 years later, our daughter Anna joined our family. Our little apartment was bursting at the seams, but it was filled with love. Sophia stayed home with the children while I built my business. There were many nights when I came home so tired I could barely stand, my back aching and my hands bleeding from work. But seeing my family made it all worthwhile. As the years passed, my small company grew. By the time Michael was 10, we had moved into a modest 3-bedroom house in a good school district. It was not fancy, but it was ours, and we were proud of it. I remember Michael asking why we did not have a swimming pool like his friend Jack. I explained that we had different priorities, like saving for his college education. "But Jack's dad just bought him a new bike too," Michael complained. "Jack's dad is not paying for Jack to go to any college he wants," I replied. "We are saving for your future, not spending on things we do not need right now." Sophia and I were determined that our children would graduate without student debt. We drove the same cars for 15 years, rarely took vacations, and put every extra dollar into education funds. My business continued to grow, and by the time Michael was ready for college, we had saved enough for both children to attend good schools. Michael chose a prestigious private university across the country. I still remember helping him move into his dorm, noticing how his roommate's parents arrived in a luxury car while we pulled up in our 10-year-old sedan. I saw something in Michael's eyes, then a hint of embarrassment that I tried to ignore. "Dad, why do we still live in that small house when your business is doing so well?" he asked during his sophomore year. "Todd's dad is a contractor too, and they live in a mansion." I tried to explain our values. "We live comfortably, Michael. We do not need a mansion. And Todd's dad has a lot of debt. We prefer to live within our means and save for important things. When Michael got accepted to law school, Sophia and I were bursting with pride. Our son, the future lawyer, no one in either of our families had ever achieved such success. The day he received his acceptance letter, I took the family out to the nicest restaurant in town, a rare extravagance for us. "I am going to make you proud, Dad," Michael said, as we toasted his success. "One day I will pay you back for everything." Law school was expensive, but we managed. I took on extra projects, working weekends and holidays. My body began to protest. Decades of physical labor had left me with a bad back and arthritis in my hands, but I pushed through the pain. Sophia worried about my health, but I assured her it was temporary. "Just 3 more years," I told her. "Then Michael will be set for life." When Michael graduated from law school, I was the proudest father in the audience. Watching him walk across that stage in his cap and gown, I felt like all our sacrifices had been worth it. He had landed a job at a prestigious law firm in the city with a starting salary that was more than I had ever made in a year. The first signs of trouble came when Michael bought a luxury car just 3 months into his new job. Sophia questioned whether it was a wise purchase for someone just starting their career, but I defended him. "He worked hard to get where he is," I said. "Let him enjoy the fruits of his labor." Then came the expensive vacations, the designer clothes, the nights out at exclusive clubs. Michael's Instagram feed looked like that of a celebrity, not a first-year associate drowning in work. Still, I made excuses. "He is networking," I told Sophia. "That is how business gets done these days." All the while, Sophia and I continued our modest lifestyle. We still lived in the same house we had bought 35 years ago. I drove the same truck I had purchased 10 years earlier. We had money saved, my business had done well, but we were practical people with simple needs. "We should enjoy our money more," Sophia sometimes suggested. "Take that trip to Europe we always talked about." "There will be time for that," I always answered. "Let us make sure the kids are set first." Little did I know how much I would come to regret those words. The news of Michael's engagement came via text message, not even a phone call. "Propose to Heather tonight." She said yes. "We'll call with details later." Sophia and I were hurt by the impersonal announcement, but we chalked it up to young people and their technology. Heather came from money, old money, as they say. Her father was a senior partner at another prestigious law firm, and her mother was from a wealthy banking family. They lived in a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city and belonged to the country club where membership costs more than our house. The engagement party was held at Heather's parents' country club. Sophia bought a new dress for the occasion, her first in years, and I dusted off my one good suit. As we walked into the opulent ballroom, I felt immediately out of place. Men in tuxedos and women dripping in jewelry surrounded us. I noticed how some of them looked at us with that subtle mixture of curiosity and dismissal that wealthy people reserve for those they consider beneath them. "Jesus, Sophia, so glad you could make it," Heather's father Richard boomed as he approached us. He was a tall man with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a fake smile that never reached his eyes. "What a charming couple you are." The way he said charming made it sound like we were quaint curiosities rather than the parents of his future son-in-law. Throughout the evening, Michael seemed to keep his distance from us, flitting between groups of well-dressed young professionals and Heather's family friends. When he did introduce us to his colleagues, it was with a strained smile. "This is my father Jesus," he would say. "He works in construction." Works not worked. Despite having told him multiple times that I had sold my company and retired the previous year, he continued to present me as if I was still swinging a hammer for a living. I did not correct him. I did not want to embarrass him in front of his friends. A month after the engagement party, Michael called to say he and Heather were house hunting. That is exciting, I said. First homes are special. Well, it is not exactly a starter home, Dad, Michael replied with a laugh. We are looking in Oakwood Heights. My heart sank a little. Oakwood Heights was the most expensive neighborhood in the city, the kind of place where homes started at $1 million. That is quite ambitious, I said carefully. Are you sure you want to take on that kind of mortgage so early in your career? Dad, this is an investment in our future, Michael said dismissively. Besides, all my colleagues live in nice neighborhoods. We need to be where the right people are. A week later, Michael invited us to tour homes with him and Heather. We met their real estate agent, a sleek woman named Tara, who wore more jewelry than Sophia had owned in her lifetime. She showed us several properties, each more lavish than the last. This 3-bedroom in Riverdale is beautiful, I suggested at one point, noticing it was in a nice but more reasonably priced neighborhood. And it is closer to both your offices. Michael and Heather exchanged glances. Dad, Riverdale is fine for families just starting out, but it is hardly where we see ourselves, Michael said with a forced patience that made me feel like a child being educated by an adult. By the end of the day, they had settled on a 5-bedroom colonial in Oakwood Heights, with a 3-car garage and a swimming pool. The asking price was $1.2 million. As we stood in the expansive kitchen with its marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, Michael casually mentioned the down payment. We will need to put down at least 20% to get the best rate, he said, running his hand along the expensive countertop. That is $240,000. I nodded, doing the math in my head. It seemed like an enormous amount for a young couple, but I assumed they had been saving. Between what we have saved and what Heather's parents are contributing, we are still about $50,000 short. Michael continued, not quite making eye contact. I was hoping you and Mom might be able to help us out. The request hung in the air. Sophia squeezed my hand, a warning I chose to ignore. The following week, I met with our financial advisor, Frank, to discuss the possibility of helping Michael with the down payment. Frank and I had worked together for 20 years, and he knew our financial situation intimately. Jesus, you can afford to give him the $50,000, Frank said after reviewing our accounts. But I have to ask, are you sure this is what you want to do? That is a significant portion of your retirement savings. He is my son, I replied simply, and this is important to him. Frank nodded, but I could tell he had reservations. Just remember, you cannot get these funds back if you need them later. This would be a gift, not a loan. I thought about it for several days. Sophia and I had long discussions about the wisdom of giving such a large sum. We have always said we would help the children when they needed it, I argued. And Michael has worked hard to get where he is. Yes, Sophia agreed reluctantly. But does he need $1 million house, and why is he not asking us directly instead of dropping hints? Despite her concerns, I decided to give Michael the money. I withdrew $50,000 from our retirement account and wrote a check. We invited Michael to dinner at our home to present it to him. I cooked his favorite meal, my mother's recipe for chile rellenos that I had perfected over the years. The table was set with the good dishes we used only for special occasions. When Michael arrived, he seemed preoccupied, checking his phone repeatedly throughout the meal. After dinner, I handed him the envelope containing the check. Your mother and I want to help you start this new chapter of your life, I said, my voice thick with emotion. We are so proud of the man you have become. Michael opened the envelope and his eyes widened slightly at the amount. Wow, Dad, this is really generous. Thank you. He gave me a quick hug, the first in longer than I could remember, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the boy who used to run to the door to greet me after work. As he was leaving, Sophia pulled me aside. $50,000 is a lot of money, Jesus. Are you sure this was the right decision? He is our son, I replied, and family helps family. I had no idea how quickly those words would come back to haunt me. The phone call came exactly 2 days after I had given Michael the check. I was in the garage organizing my tools, a retirement project I had been putting off for months, when my cell phone rang. Seeing Michael's name on the screen brought a smile to my face. "Hello, son," I answered cheerfully. "How are things going with the house?" "Hi, Dad." Michael replied, his tone casual. "Things are good. Listen, I need a favor." "Of course," I said, setting down the wrench I had been holding. "What do you need?" "There is this charity gala next week, really important networking event for the firm. All the partners will be there," Michael explained rapidly. "The tickets are $1,400 each." I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. $1,400 for a charity event. "It is for a good cause," Michael continued, sounding slightly impatient. "But more importantly, it is a chance for me and Heather to connect with the right people. It could really help my career." I hesitated, thinking about the $50,000 check I had just given him. "Michael, what about the money I just gave you? Could you not use a small portion of that?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Michael's voice, cooler now. "That is for the house, Dad. This is different. The down payment is already allocated. This is a separate expense." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, as though I was being unreasonable for even asking, felt wrong. "I see," I said slowly. "When do you need the money? Can you meet me tomorrow for lunch?" "We can do that Italian place you like," Michael suggested, his voice brightening now that he sensed I was giving in. "Okay," I agreed, though a voice in my head was screaming that something was not right. "Tomorrow at noon." "Perfect. Thanks, Dad. You are the best. Gotta run, important call coming in." The line went dead before I could respond. The next day, I arrived at Luciano's, a mid-priced Italian restaurant that Michael knew I enjoyed, 15 minutes early. I was always punctual, a habit from my working days, when being late to a job site meant lost money and unhappy clients. Michael, on the other hand, operated on his own schedule. 20 minutes after our agreed meeting time, he finally walked in, designer sunglasses, perched on his headphone in hand, typing rapidly as he approached the table. "Sorry I am late, Dad," he said, without looking up from his phone. "Client emergency." He finally put his phone down and glanced around the restaurant with a slightly dissatisfied expression. I realized with a sinking feeling that this place, which I considered a treat, was probably below his usual standards now. "I went ahead and ordered you the lasagna," I said, trying to keep things pleasant. "I remember it is your favorite." "I am actually doing low carb now," Michael replied with a tight smile. "But it is fine. I can just eat the meat part." There was an awkward silence as we waited for the food. I tried to ask about the house, about Heather, about his work, but Michael gave short, distracted answers, his eyes constantly darting to his phone. When the food arrived, Michael picked at his lasagna, separating the meat from the pasta, with a look of mild distaste. After a few minutes of this, he set down his fork and got to the point. "So about those tickets," he began, pulling out his phone again. "I can send you the link to pay directly, or you can just write a check. Whatever is easier." I felt a heaviness in my chest. "No, how are you, Dad? No interest in my life, my recent retirement, or anything else. Just straight to the request for money." "Michael," I started carefully, "I do not understand. You are making a good salary. You just received $50,000 from us. Why do you need me to pay for these tickets?" Michael's expression hardened slightly. "Dad, You do not understand how things work in my world. These events are investments in my future. The connections I make there could be worth millions down the road. If they are so valuable, then surely they are worth spending your own money on, I suggested gently. My money is tied up in the house down payment, Michael said with exaggerated patience as though explaining something to a child. Besides, you have always said you wanted to support my career. I looked at my son, this stranger in expensive clothes, who seemed to view me as nothing more than an ATM, and felt a profound sadness. But I also felt trapped. I had always prided myself on supporting my children, on never letting them down. All right, I finally said, reaching for my checkbook. Who do I make it out to? A smile spread across Michael's face, the same smile he used to give me when I agreed to buy him ice cream as a child. Just make it out to me. I will handle the payment. My hands trembled slightly as I wrote the check. $1,400, nearly a month's worth of grocery money for Sophia and me. I tried to push away the growing discomfort. I felt the sense that something was fundamentally wrong with this interaction. As I handed him the check, Michael stood up. Thanks, Dad. I have to run meeting with a client in 20 minutes across town. But you have barely touched your food, I protested, gesturing to his barely eaten lunch. I will grab something later, he said, already typing on his phone again. Heather knows this great sushi place near the office. And before he left, he gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, not even a proper goodbye. I sat there alone, staring at my half-eaten meal, feeling hollow. As I was paying the bill, I realized Michael had gone to the restroom before leaving. I needed to use it myself before the drive home, so I made my way to the back of the restaurant. As I approached the men's room, I heard Michael's voice coming from inside, louder than normal, as if he was unaware of his volume. Yeah, I got it, no problem, he was saying with a laugh. The old man did not even hesitate. Another $1,400 in the vacation fund. I froze outside the door, my hand suspended in midair. I know, right? Michael continued, responding to whoever was on the other end of the call. Between this and the $50,000 he gave me for the house down payment, we can definitely upgrade to first class and stay an extra week in Italy. My blood ran cold. Italy? What house down payment? Trust me, there is more where that came from, Michael was saying now, his voice smug. Dad still thinks I am his golden boy. He has no idea I am just milking him for cash. He and Mom have been sitting on a fortune for years, living like they are still poor. Somebody might as well enjoy it. I backed away from the door, bumping into a waitress, who gave me a concerned look. I mumbled an apology and hurried out of the restaurant, barely making it to my truck before the tears came. My son, my beautiful boy, whom I had sacrificed everything for, had been using me all along. The $50,000 was never meant for a house. The $1,400 was not for charity tickets. It was all a lie, a calculated scheme to extract money from his foolish, trusting father. I sat in my truck for nearly an hour, unable to drive, unable to think clearly. When I finally called Sophia, my voice was barely recognizable. Jesus! What is wrong? You sound terrible, she said, instantly alarmed. We need to talk, I managed to say. About Michael, about everything. The drive home from the restaurant was a blur. My mind kept replaying Michael's words. The old man did not even hesitate. Milking him for cash. Each phrase was like a knife to my heart. When I walked through our front door, Sophia took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. Jesus, what happened? She asked, leading me to the couch. I told her everything, the conversation at lunch, the phone call I had overheard. As I spoke, Sophia's expression changed from concern to pain to anger. I have had concerns about Michael for a long time, she admitted when I finished. The way he treats us, the way he seems embarrassed by us around his new friends. But I never thought he would deliberately lie to us like this. We need to be sure, I said, my practical nature asserting itself despite the emotional turmoil. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe there is another explanation. Sophia nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. We agreed that I would do some investigating before confronting Michael. The next day, I called Jennifer Parker, the real estate agent who had shown us the houses with Michael and Heather. I claimed I wanted to surprise the kids by seeing the house again and possibly buying them some furniture as a housewarming gift. "Oh, Mr. Martin," Jennifer said, sounding confused. "I have not heard from Michael in over 2 weeks. As far as I know, they have not moved forward with the purchase. No down payment has been submitted." My heart sank. "I see. And have they looked at any other properties with you?" "No, sir. The last I heard, they were still interested in the Oakwood Heights property, but they needed to sort out some financial details before proceeding. Is everything okay?" "Yes, just a miscommunication." I assured her, though inside I felt like I was crumbling. After hanging up, I sat at my computer and reluctantly opened Instagram. I rarely used social media, but I followed my children's accounts to keep up with their lives. I scrolled through Michael's recent posts, and there it was, posted just yesterday. A photo of plane tickets to Rome dated for the following month with the caption, "First class upgrade secured, Italy, here we come. Luxury travel. First class. No budget travel." The trip was scheduled for exactly 2 weeks from now, a 30-day tour of Italy's most expensive destinations. In the comments, one of Michael's friends had written, "That house down payment coming in handy, eh?" Michael had responded with a laughing emoji and, "Priorities, man. Real estate can wait. YOLO. You only live once." The phrase echoed in my head as I stared at the evidence of my son's betrayal. I called Anna, our daughter, who lived in a nearby city with her husband. Unlike Michael, Anna had chosen a modest career as a school teacher. She lived within her means and visited us regularly. We had helped her too over the years, but she had never asked for more than she needed. "Dad, is everything okay? You never call during school hours." Anna answered, concern in her voice. "I need to ask you something about your brother," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Has he mentioned anything about a trip to Italy?" There was a pause on the other end. "Oh, Dad," Anna finally said, her voice soft with sympathy. "You did not know." "Know what?" "Michael and Heather have been planning this trip for months. They are staying at 5-star hotels, taking private tours. He was bragging about it in our family group chat." I frowned. "What family group chat?" Another pause. "The one without you and Mom. Michael started it last year. He said it was because you both are not good with technology, but—" She trailed off. "But what, Anna? He mostly uses it to complain about you guys or to brag about how he is getting you to pay for things," she admitted reluctantly. "I have called him out on it several times, but he just says I am jealous because I do not know how to work the system like he does." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "Has he mentioned anything about the money we gave him for a house down payment? He said he was using it for the Italy trip because, and I quote, 'the old folks do not need to know everything.' Dad, I am so sorry. I thought you knew about the trip. I thought you had approved it." I thanked Anna for her honesty and asked her to send me screenshots of the group chat. When they came through, I could barely bring myself to read them. There were dozens of messages from Michael over the past year, all detailing his strategies for extracting money from us. "Dad is such a sucker for the 'I am making you proud' routine," one message read. "Just had to mention my promising career path, and he wrote a check for $5,000 to update my wardrobe for important client meetings." bought that Rolex I wanted instead. Another successfully guilted mom into giving me her anniversary diamond to incorporate into Heather's ring, even though Heather already has a massive rock from her parents. Going to sell it to fund our Aspen ski trip. I did not even know Sophia had given him her diamond. She had told me she had lost it. The most recent message was the most painful. Operation Down Payment was a success, secured $50K from the retirement fund. Next step, convincing them to help pay for the wedding. Thinking of a destination event in Hawaii. That should extract another $100K easy. I showed everything to Sophia that evening. At first she was in denial, making excuses for Michael's behavior. Maybe he is just showing off to his sister, she suggested weakly. You know how they have always competed for attention. But as she read through the messages, saw the Instagram posts, and heard about my conversation with the real estate agent, the truth became undeniable. Our son had been systematically manipulating us, lying to us, and stealing from us under the guise of needing help. What did we do wrong? Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. Where did we fail as parents? I put my arm around her shoulders. We did not fail, mi amor. We gave him everything: love, support, education, opportunities. The choices he has made as an adult are his own. The $50,000 check had already been cashed. I confirmed that with our bank. The money was gone, and legally there was nothing we could do about it. It had been given as a gift, with no written agreement about its purpose. What do we do now? Sophia asked. I thought about it for a long moment, the pain in my chest, both physical and emotional. Now we confront our son, and we set some boundaries that should have been established long ago. I called Michael the next day and asked him to come to the house on Sunday for a family dinner. He initially made excuses. He was busy. He had plans with Heather. There was a work event he could not miss. This is important, Michael, I said firmly. Your mother and I need to see you. Something in my tone must have alerted him that this was not a typical invitation. Is everything okay, Dad? You sound strange. We will talk on Sunday, I replied. 6 p.m. Do not be late. For the first time in years, Michael arrived at our house exactly on time. Sophia had prepared his favorite childhood meal, her special enchiladas with the homemade sauce that took hours to simmer to perfection. It was a peace offering of sorts, though neither of us felt particularly peaceful. Michael seemed distracted as usual, his eyes frequently darting to his phone throughout the meal. He made minimal conversation, asking no questions about our lives, but offering superficial updates about his own work. The Anderson case is going well, he was saying as he picked at his food. The senior partner has been letting me take the lead on some key depositions. That sounds impressive, I said, forcing myself to play along for the moment. Your mother and I are very proud of your career success. Michael nodded absently, clearly not registering the slight edge in my voice. After dinner, I suggested we move to the living room for coffee. Michael checked his watch. I should really get going soon, he said. Heather and I have plans later. This will not take long, I assured him, my voice firmer now. Once we were seated in the living room, the folder of evidence on the coffee table between us, I took a deep breath. Sophia reached for my hand, giving it a supportive squeeze. Michael, I began, we need to discuss the $50,000 we gave you. His expression remained neutral. What about it? It was our understanding that the money was for a down payment on a house. I continued carefully. He nodded. That is right. We are still in the process of finalizing things with the seller. The lie came so easily to him without a flicker of guilt or hesitation. It broke something inside me. That is interesting, I said, opening the folder. Because I spoke with Jennifer Parker yesterday. She told me you have not submitted any down payment nor have you been in contact with her for over 2 weeks. Michael's composure slipped for just a moment before he regained control. We are working with a different agent now. Jennifer was not aggressive enough in negotiations. I nodded, then pulled out the printouts of his Instagram posts. And these tickets to Italy, the first-class upgrade you mentioned, the 30-day luxury tour. Now Michael's expression changed. A flash of anger quickly masked by indignation. You are spying on me, going through my social media. That is an invasion of privacy, Dad. It is not spying to look at public posts, son, I replied calmly. Posts where you openly brag about using the house down payment for a vacation. Michael shifted strategies, his lawyer training kicking in. The money was a gift, he said coldly. You did not specify how it had to be used. You lied to us about why you needed it. Sophia interjected, her voice trembling with emotion. You specifically asked for help with a house down payment. I changed my mind. Michael shrugged. Priorities shift. The real estate market is volatile right now. It makes more sense to wait. I pulled out more papers from the folder, the screenshots Anna had sent me of the family group chat, and these messages explaining how you manipulate us for money, how you are planning to extract another 100,000 for a destination wedding. Were those just shifting priorities too? Michael's face flushed red. For a moment I thought he might deny it. All might offer some elaborate explanation. Instead, he went on the offensive. Why should not I get something out of you two? He demanded, his voice rising. You have been sitting on money for years, living like we are still poor, while I am out there trying to build a life that matters. A life that matters, I repeated, stunned by his words. What do you think we have been doing all these years? Working ourselves to the bone to give you opportunities, sacrificing our own comfort to pay for your education. Oh, please, Michael scoffed. You and your sacrifices. You know what it is like having parents who live like they are still immigrants when all my friends had normal American parents. Do you know how embarrassing it was bringing friends to this house, watching you pack leftovers at restaurants, driving that old truck that backfires? Each word was like a slap. Sophia made a small wounded noise beside me. We gave you everything we could, I said quietly. We put you through college without debt. We paid for law school. We supported your career choices. We gave you $50,000 just 2 weeks ago. And you made sure I knew about every single sacrifice along the way, Michael shot back. Poor Dad with his aching back and arthritic hands. Poor Mom giving up her career to raise the kids. The constant reminder of everything you gave up for us. Well, guess what? I never asked for all that. No child asks to be born Michael, Sophia said softly. But parents give anyway. That is what love is. Love. Michael laughed bitterly. If you loved me, you would want me to have the life I deserve. The life my friends have, the ones whose parents set them up properly. Heather's parents bought them a summer home as an engagement present. A whole house. Meanwhile, you two act like 50,000 is some massive sacrifice when you are sitting on millions from Dad's company sale. I felt my temper rising, but forced myself to remain calm. Our money is not your entitlement, I said firmly. And you have no idea what we are sitting on because our finances are not your business. Just as your finances should be your own responsibility now that you are an adult with a high-paying job. Michael stood up abruptly. This is pointless. You two will never understand what it is like trying to build a life in today's world. Everything costs more now. The expectations are different. The expectation to be honest with your parents should not be different in any generation, I replied. Honest, Michael sneered, like you were honest about being proud of me. You have been judging my lifestyle since day one. disapproving of my car, my clothes, my choice in partners. Heather's family gets it. They understand the world I am living in. We have never said a negative word about Heather, Sophia protested. We have welcomed her into our home, into our family. While making her feel like an outsider with your simple ways and your embarrassing stories about my childhood, Michael retorted. Do you know how hard she laughed when I told her you still use coupons, Mom, that you wash and reuse Ziploc bags? Sophia flinched as though she had been struck. I felt a surge of protectiveness toward my wife and a corresponding wave of anger toward my son. That is enough, I said, standing to face Michael. You will not speak to your mother that way in our home. Fine, Michael said, grabbing his jacket. This whole conversation is a waste of time anyway. The money is spent. It was a gift. Legally, you cannot do anything about it. This is not about legality, I said sadly. This is about trust, about respect, about family. Michael paused at the door, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating look I now realized had become his default expression. Family goes both ways, Dad, he said. When you and Mom are ready to support me without all the judgment and strings attached, let me know. The door slammed behind him, leaving Sophia and me standing in stunned silence. Our daughter Anna, who had been waiting in the kitchen to provide moral support, came in and wordlessly embraced us both. I am so sorry, she whispered. I should have told you sooner what was happening. This is not your fault, I assured her. Some lessons we have to learn for ourselves, no matter how painful. As I held my wife and daughter, I felt something shift inside me, a resolve forming where hurt had been. Michael had made his choices, and now we needed to make ours. The week after our confrontation with Michael was one of the most difficult of my life. Sophia and I moved through our days like ghosts, going through the motions, but feeling hollowed out inside. We had lost something precious, not just money, but the image of who we thought our son was. I made an appointment with Frank, our financial advisor, to discuss our options moving forward. I am sorry about what happened with Michael, Frank said after I explained the situation. Unfortunately, from a legal standpoint, there is not much you can do about the $50,000. It was given as a gift with no written agreement about its purpose. I understand that, I replied. I am not here to try to get that money back. I am here to protect what we have left. Frank nodded approvingly. That is wise. Let us look at your estate planning and make some adjustments. Over the next 2 hours, we revised our will and financial plans. Previously, our assets had been divided equally between Michael and Anna. Now we established a more complex arrangement. The bulk of our estate would go into a trust that would provide Anna with immediate access, but would place significant restrictions on Michael's portion. He can access funds for true necessities, medical emergencies, education for any children. He might have a reasonable primary residence, Frank explained as we reviewed the documents. But luxury purchases, vacations, and similar expenses would require approval from the trustee. Who would that be? Sophia asked. I would recommend an impartial third party, perhaps a trust attorney, Frank suggested. Someone who will not be swayed by emotional manipulation. The changes felt drastic, but necessary. As we signed the updated documents, I felt both sadness and relief. This was not what we had envisioned for our family, but it was the reality we now faced. Meanwhile, Michael continued his campaign to extract money from us. The texts began rolling in a few days after our confrontation. Dad, I think you overreacted the other night. Let us talk. Need your advice on an investment opportunity? Call me. Mom, can you talk to Dad? This silent treatment is childish. We did not respond to any of these transparent attempts. Then the messages became more direct. There is a client dinner next week. Need to cover the bill to impress the partner. 2,000. We'll pay you back. Car needs emergency repair. 3 grand. Help? When these received no response, Michael changed tactics again. Not sure why you are punishing me for being honest about using the money differently. At least I am living my life, not sitting on my money like a miser. The final message was the most revealing. Fine. If that is how you want to play it. Just remember, I am the one who will be choosing your nursing home someday. That last text was the one that finally broke through my grief to ignite pure anger. I showed it to Sophia, who read it with a stricken expression. How did we raise someone who could say such a thing? She whispered. I had no answer for her. A week later, we received an unexpected call from Richard Heather's father. He invited us to dinner at their home, saying there were important family matters to discuss. My first instinct was to decline, but Sophia suggested we should hear what he had to say. The dinner was as uncomfortable as I had anticipated. Heather's mother, Elaine, was coolly polite, while Richard dominated the conversation with talk of business and politics. Michael and Heather sat across from us, Michael avoiding eye contact, while Heather watched the interaction with curious eyes. After dinner, Richard suggested the men retire to the study for a digestif, an old-fashioned custom that felt designed to intimidate. Once we were alone with our brandies, Richard got to the point. Michael tells me you have had a falling out over some financial matters. He began swirling his drink. He seems to think you are being unreasonable. I remained silent, waiting. Look, Jesus, Richard continued, leaning forward. I understand your background is different from ours. Perhaps you do not understand the financial pressures young professionals face today. I understand the difference between truth and lies, I replied quietly, between gratitude and entitlement. Richard seemed taken aback by my directness. Well, yes, of course. But family disagreements can often be resolved with a little flexibility. Michael and Heather's wedding is coming up. We were expecting you would want to contribute in a meaningful way. So there it was, the real reason for the dinner. They wanted to pressure us into paying for an extravagant wedding. Richard, I said, setting down my untouched brandy. Let me be very clear. We love our son, but recent events have forced us to establish some boundaries. We will attend the wedding as parents of the groom. We will not be financing it. Richard's expression hardened. I see. And what exactly has Michael done that warrants such a harsh response from his parents? I considered how much to reveal. He lied to us about the purpose of a substantial gift. He has shown a pattern of manipulative behavior. He has expressed contempt for the values that have guided our lives. Until these issues are addressed, our financial relationship with him has changed. Richard studied me for a long moment, then surprised me with a slow nod. I suspected as much, he said, his tone shifting. Michael's explanation of your disagreement did not quite add up. He leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking weary. Between you and me, I have had some concerns about his spending habits and sense of entitlement myself. Heather comes from wealth, but she understands its value. Michael seems to view money as something he deserves without earning it. I had not expected this level of insight from Richard, who had always struck me as somewhat superficial. I found myself warming to him slightly. The Italy trip was a particular point of concern, Richard continued. 30 days away from work at his level inappropriate. When I questioned it, he claimed you had enthusiastically supported the idea. We knew nothing about it until after we discovered he had misused funds we provided for a house down payment, I replied. Richard nodded thoughtfully. I appreciate your candor, Jesus, and if I may say your principles. They are increasingly rare these days. As we rejoined the women, I noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Richard was more respectful toward Sophia, engaging her in genuine conversation, rather than talking down to her as he had in the past. Michael observed this change with visible confusion. When we left, Richard shook my hand firmly. "We will be in touch about the wedding details," he said. "I respect your position and understand your boundaries." In the car on the way home, Sophia squeezed my hand. "You stood your ground," she said proudly. "And I think you might have gained an ally in Richard." "A strange world," I replied, "when I find more understanding from my son's future father-in-law than from my son himself." The following weeks brought more developments. Michael's messages stopped abruptly, replaced by occasional formal emails about wedding logistics. Anna visited more frequently, bringing her husband James, and filling our home with warmth and genuine conversation. One Saturday, while helping Anna move some furniture in her apartment, she shared something that brought me a small measure of hope. "Michael called me yesterday," she said, as we positioned a bookshelf against the wall. "He actually asked how you and Mom are doing." I tried not to show how much this small gesture affected me. "What did you tell him?" "The truth," Anna replied. "That you are hurt but resilient. That you still love him but cannot support behavior that goes against everything you taught us." I nodded, focusing on adjusting the shelf to hide the emotion in my eyes. "Dad," Anna continued gently. "He sounded different, less defensive. I think reality might be setting in, especially after Heather's parents scaled back their wedding contribution." "They did," Anna nodded. "Richard told them he would match whatever you and Mom contribute dollar for dollar. Since you are only covering your own attendance costs." The implication was clear. Richard had aligned himself with our position, forcing Michael to confront the consequences of his actions. "Maybe this will be the wake-up call he needs," I said, not entirely convinced, but allowing myself a sliver of hope. A week later, an invitation arrived for Michael and Heather's wedding. It was far more modest than the extravaganza Michael had initially described in his group chat messages, a ceremony and reception at a local country club rather than a Hawaiian destination event. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note from Michael. "Your presence is the only gift we request." The words seemed formulaic, a standard phrase for wedding invitations, yet I wondered if there was a deeper message behind them. Sophia and I decided to attend the wedding, but to stand firm in our decision not to fund it beyond covering our own expenses. We purchased a modest but meaningful gift, a handcrafted serving platter from a local artisan, and prepared ourselves emotionally for what would undoubtedly be a complex day. 6 months passed before the wedding day arrived. During that time, Sophia and I embarked on our own journey of healing and growth. The betrayal we had experienced forced us to confront hard truths, not just about Michael, but about ourselves as well. "Perhaps we enabled his behavior," Sophia suggested during one of our many late-night conversations about what had gone wrong. "We gave and gave, never expecting anything in return, not even respect." I nodded, acknowledging the painful truth in her words. We wanted to give him everything we never had. But in doing so, maybe we never taught him the value of earning things for himself. We began seeing a family therapist, Dr. Reynolds, who helped us process our feelings of guilt, betrayal, and loss. During one particularly insightful session, she asked us a question that changed our perspective. "What if the best thing you can do for Michael now is not to give him what he asks for?" she suggested. "What if the most loving act is to allow him to experience the consequences of his choices?" This framework that boundaries could be an expression of love rather than punishment helped ease some of the guilt we felt about our decision to step back financially. We also began reconnecting with old friends we had neglected over the years. There was Dave and Linda, a couple from my construction days, who had retired to a small house by the lake. We started joining them for fishing trips and barbecues, finding comfort in their straightforward friendship. "You know Jesus," Dave said to me during one of these outings. "I always admired how hard you worked for your kids. But speaking as someone who spoiled his own son rotten, sometimes the best gifts are not the ones that come with dollar signs." Dave's son had struggled with addiction for years, draining their savings, with repeated promises of recovery that never materialized. They had eventually been forced to cut him off financially, a decision that had ultimately led to him finally seeking help and building a stable life. "Hardest thing we ever did," Dave admitted. But he tells us now it was the only thing that could have worked. These conversations gave us hope that our own difficult decisions might eventually lead to healing with Michael. Sophia and I also began planning the retirement travels we had postponed for so many years. We booked a 2-week trip to Spain for the fall after the wedding. It would be our first real vacation in decades, a chance to reconnect with each other and with my ancestral roots. "We should have done this years ago," Sophia said, as we pored over travel guides together. "We have always put everyone else first." "Better late than never, mi amor," I replied, kissing her hand. "We have time now." During these months, Michael remained distant. The occasional email about wedding details was cordial but impersonal. Anna kept us informed about his life. The Italy trip had been shortened to 1 week instead of 30 days, and he and Heather had eventually purchased a modest townhouse rather than the mansion in Oakwood Heights. Richard connected them with a financial advisor, Anna told us. Someone who is helping them create a realistic budget based on their actual income, not on what they can extract from parents. This news gave me a small measure of satisfaction. Richard had indeed proven to be an unexpected ally in encouraging Michael toward greater financial responsibility. When the wedding day finally arrived, Sophia and I dressed in our finest clothes, not new ones purchased for the occasion, but well-kept outfits that represented our values of quality and longevity over flash and novelty. Sophia wore the same pearl necklace I had given her on our 20th anniversary, and I wore my father's gold watch passed down when I graduated college. The ceremony was held at St. Joseph's Catholic Church, a nod to our family's religious traditions that surprised and touched me. As we took our seats in the front row reserved for immediate family, I felt a complex mix of emotions, pride in seeing my son take this important life step, sorrow at the distance between us, hope that this might mark a new beginning. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, standing nervously at the altar. When he caught sight of us entering the church, a flicker of something crossed his face, relief, perhaps, or gratitude. He gave a small nod in our direction, which I returned. After the ceremony at the reception, we presented our gift to the newlyweds. Michael accepted the carefully wrapped package with formal thanks, but when Heather opened it and exclaimed over the craftsmanship of the serving platter, I saw genuine appreciation in his eyes. "This is beautiful," Heather said sincerely, "and so thoughtful. We just painted our dining room this exact shade of blue." "Dad has always had an eye for craft," Michael said quietly, running his fingers over the glazed surface. "He taught me the difference between something made with care and something mass-produced." It was a small moment, but it felt significant, an acknowledgement of something valuable I had given him beyond money. Richard sought me out later in the evening, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. He offered one to me and raised his in a toast. "To principles," he said, "and to fathers doing the difficult work of parenting adult children." We talked for some time about the challenges of wealth and family finding unexpected common ground, despite our different backgrounds. "You know," Richard said thoughtfully. I initially misunderstood your position. I thought you were being punitive, perhaps even petty. But I see now you were doing something I should have done much earlier with my own children, teaching them that love and money are not the same thing. As the evening progressed, I found myself watching Michael from a distance. He seemed different, less showy, more present with his guests. When it came time for the traditional father-son dance, Heather had insisted on including it. Despite the tension, Michael approached me with uncharacteristic humility. Dad, he said formally, would you share this dance with me? The band played What a Wonderful World as we awkwardly took to the floor. Neither of us were dancers, and the emotion of the moment made us both stiff and unsure. Thank you for coming today, Michael said after a few moments of silence. It means a lot to Heather, and to me. We would never have missed it, I replied simply. You are our son. Michael nodded, his eyes focusing somewhere over my shoulder. I know things have been difficult between us. It was not quite an apology, but it was something, an acknowledgement at least, that our estrangement had causes beyond my unreasonableness. Family is complicated. I offered, giving him an opening without forcing the issue. Michael met my eyes briefly. Yes, it is. We finished the dance in silence, but it was not the cold silence of recent months. It was a thoughtful silence, pregnant with unspoken words that might someday find their way into the open. When Sophia and I left the reception, Michael walked us to our car. The formal kiss on the cheek he gave his mother was stiff but sincere. The handshake he offered me turned at the last moment into a brief, awkward hug. Safe travels in Spain, he said as we got into the car. Anna told me about your trip. Thank you, Michael, Sophia replied. We will send postcards. As we drove away, I felt a weight lifting, not completely, but enough to take a deep breath for what felt like the first time in months. Do you think things will change? Sophia asked, reaching for my hand across the console. I do not know, I answered honestly. But today felt like a beginning, not an end. A year passed after the wedding. Sophia and I embraced our retirement, fully taking the Spain trip we had promised ourselves, and later a cruise to Alaska. We began volunteering at a community center near our home, teaching construction skills and financial literacy to young immigrants, people who reminded me of my own parents when they first arrived in this country. Michael and Heather settled into married life. Through Anna, we learned they had scaled back their lifestyle significantly. Michael had even turned down a higher-paying position at a more prestigious firm in favor of one that offered better work-life balance. Our contact with him remained limited, but gradually improved. Birthday calls became less formal. Holiday gatherings, though still somewhat tense, no longer felt like diplomatic negotiations between hostile nations. At Christmas, a year and 2 months after our confrontation over the $50,000, Michael arrived at our home with Heather for the traditional family dinner. They brought a bottle of wine and a small gift, a framed photo of the four of us from the wedding, Michael and Heather in the center. Sophia and I on either side, all smiling with cautious hope. After dinner, while Heather helped Sophia and Anna with the dishes, Michael asked if he could speak with me privately. We stepped out onto the back porch, where the December air was cool but not uncomfortable. Dad. Michael began, his breath visible in the night air. I owe you an apology. I stayed silent, giving him space to continue. What I did with the money you gave me, it was wrong, dishonest, disrespectful. The words seemed to cost him something to say, but he pressed on. I have been working with a therapist this past year, trying to understand why I felt entitled to take advantage of you and Mom that way. And have you found any answers? I asked quietly. Michael sighed, leaning against the porch railing. Some. I think somewhere along the way I started resenting the sacrifices you made for me instead of appreciating them. Each time you mentioned giving up something so I could have an opportunity, I felt burdened rather than grateful. I nodded, understanding dawning. The weight of expectation. Yes, Michael said, looking surprised at my comprehension. But that was my issue to work through, not an excuse to lie and manipulate you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is not the full amount, he said, holding it out to me. But it is the first payment. Heather and I have worked out a budget where we set aside a portion of each paycheck. I plan to pay back the full $50,000, even though I know you never asked for that. I looked at the envelope but did not take it immediately. This is not about the money, Michael. It never was. I know, he said, still holding out the envelope. It is about trust, about respect, about family. I remember what you said that night. This is not just repayment. It is a commitment to being the son you deserve. I accepted the envelope, then not for its contents, but for what it represented, a step toward healing, toward rebuilding what had been broken. Thank you, I said simply. We stood in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching our breath form clouds in the cold air. There is something else, Michael said eventually. Heather and I are expecting a baby in June. Joy surged through me, pure and uncomplicated. A baby. Michael, that is wonderful news. We would like you and Mom to be involved, he continued. Really involved, not just occasional visits, if you want to be, that is. We would love nothing more, I assured him already, imagining holding my grandchild, teaching them the values that had guided my life, values that perhaps in time Michael was beginning to understand anew. As we rejoined the others inside, sharing the news about the baby and watching Sophia's face light up with joy, I reflected on the journey of the past 18 months. The pain had been real and deep, but from it had come growth, understanding, and the beginnings of a new, more authentic relationship with my son. I had learned that love sometimes means standing firm rather than giving in. That dignity and self-respect are gifts we give not just to ourselves, but to those around us. That boundaries properly set and maintained can be expressions of care rather than walls of separation. Most importantly, I had learned that it is never too late to heal, to change, to begin again, with wisdom gained from painful experience. As I looked around at my family, Sophia, Anna, and her husband Michael and Heather, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead would not be perfect or without challenges. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But we were moving forward together with open eyes and honest hearts. That night, as I lay in bed next to Sophia, who was already making plans for the nursery, I reflected on an old Spanish proverb my father used to quote, "La verdad puede claudicar, pero no caer completamente." The truth may falter, but never completely fall. Our family had faltered, but we had not fallen. And in that resilience I found my greatest pride as a father. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you balance compassion with self-respect? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing firm can sometimes be the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, dignity is a gift that keeps giving to yourself and to those you love.